Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much once again for joining us for yet another very powerful session where we are going to talk about the relevance of coaching for inclusion and empowerment. And while I was wondering who could be the best person to talk about that, I had only one name. But before we get there, first of all, let me just thank you. My name is Gaurav Arora. I'm going to be your host for this session. Let me thank you for all your trust and encouragement so that we could pull this event together. On this event, we have got over 600 people coming from 53 countries, and we are celebrating and talking about coaching and the future of humanity. And today's guest I have, she's a very dear friend, a fellow coach, and a colleague as well. Nirupama Subramanian. Nirupama is the co-founder at Conclave, leadership development expert, certified coach, a professional certified coach by ICF, a motivational speaker, and author. She's a consultant facilitator in the area of leadership development with over 25 years of experience. She is committed to helping people discover their true potential and lead their lives with passion and purpose. She is guided by the belief that greater self-awareness along with the capability enhancement can help people and organization create a significant impact in the universe. She focuses on ensuring personal growth along with the business impact through customized interventions for organizations. She's the co-founder and managing director at Growing Leadership of Women, and she calls it GLOW. She's also an adjunct faculty and coach with McKinsey & Company. Ladies and gentlemen, I've had the honor of, I have the privilege of, I have the pleasure of interacting with Nirupama on several occasions. And in every conversation and every time when she speaks about inclusion and empowerment, I could see a lot of passion and as if somebody is driven by a deeper purpose. And that shows up the kind of philanthropy work, the kind of social development work that she's involved in. She's involved in one of the NGOs and she does some really good work with women leaders. At the same time, she's personally involved in making sure the teenager girls, they get proper education. Where she actually mobilizes a lot of resources to come together so that we can actually help these leaders. Not help. Coach these leaders, mentor these women leaders to actually live a life that they deserve. And she gets really aggressive, or if I may say, pissed off when she does not see the same justice, the same fairness is being we are provided to all the women. Ladies and gentlemen, please join your hands together and welcome Nirupama to talk about coaching for inclusion and empowerment. Coaching for inclusion and empowerment, Nirupama. Nirupama, thank you so much for accepting our invitation and come and address this audience. Such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gaurav. Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with all the coaches and the leaders. And it's also an honor to talk about something that I feel very strongly about, which is inclusion and empowerment. So I want to start today's session by inviting all of you present to do a little thought experiment. So I'm going to request you to imagine 3 potential coaching clients. Please close your eyes. And I know those of you who are coaches also do a lot of these exercises with your clients. I'm going to invite you to get into that space yourself. Close your eyes and just visualize these clients in front of your eyes as I describe them. So your first client is an investment banker, ambitious, assertive, on the way to a senior leadership position in this big global bank. Your second potential client is a middle-aged, mid-level manager in a large manufacturing company who's been overlooked for promotion a couple of times. Your third potential coaching client is a young entrepreneur in the technology space, just received a huge round of funding for a startup. By now, I hope you've had these images of your potential clients in front of you, and you would have thought my question to you would be, which of these would you like to coach if you could coach only one of them? Think about that, but that is not my actual question. My question is, for how many of you were these three clients all women? Did you see women when you imagined them? Were any of these three potential clients a transgender? Anybody from the LGBTQ community? And if you did imagine all three to be men, which I suspect many of you did, were these men from the majority ethnic community in your country, or did you imagine some other kind of men? So what this goes to show, and every time I do this experiment in a large workshop, invariably there are very few women who feature in either one of these. This just goes to show that we do not live in an equal world. And there are many kinds of inequality. Economic inequality, of course, the rich countries, the poor countries, gender inequality, which is an area that I work in and I'm passionate about, but inequalities in different spheres of life. And I'll speak a little bit more about that. Of course, these inequalities do exist at the macro level. Compare GDPs of countries or living standards, and there are inequalities. But each one of us as human beings experience these inequalities at micro experience level, which is what I want to be going into further. And just to share an example about something that happened with me a few years ago. This was probably about 15, 16 years ago, and I had traveled to the United States with my husband. We were on a holiday. And in those days, it does seem like a different era, because we were not as well connected. We didn't have as much information on the internet. We went to USA. We wanted to see the Niagara Falls. So we went up to Niagara Falls. And we heard that you could walk across the border into Canada. There is a place at the Niagara Falls, which if you look across, there's a little bridge and you cross that, you're into Canada. Somebody had told us that if you had an American visa, it would not be a problem. So both of us marched up to this checkpoint, and there we saw this board. And on this board was a list of countries. If you had a passport from any one of those countries, you could not cross across into Canada. Right? So obviously, India was one of the countries. And we stayed back as we saw other people from other countries, Japanese, some white people, happily march across the border. And that's one situation where I felt there is a difference. Something I did not feel all those years of living in India, but there I felt there was something which I now call inequality or a disparity. And it doesn't mean it's right or wrong, it exists. And interestingly, there was another Indian family, who was with us, and they looked at the list and they were very affronted to find that, and they actually said, India is in the same category as Libya, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. That's not fair. We do live in a world where things are not fair. Now, I believe as much as all of you do in goodness and light and truth and grace and beauty. But we do need to confront and accept the fact that there are vast injustices, there is systemic oppression, and things are not as equal or equitable as we would like. Which is why I am very happy to be here talking about coaching for empowerment and inclusion. Just give me a few seconds. I'm going to pull up a few slides and share with you some of the things I want to talk about in terms of empowerment and inclusion. Okay. So we do need change in the world. We do need to bring about this. And I think we as coaches are very uniquely positioned to be able to do that. And in the incident I shared with you was about 15 years ago. But many of you would have noticed that in the last few years, most of the movements which are there, most of the voices which are raised in protest are against this inequality. Whether it's economic inequality, which is Occupy Wall Street, a lot of movements against gender inequality, whether it's Me Too movement or the vast number of protests against the horrific rapes in India, the more recent Black Lives Matter movement, or movements against the caste system in India. You look around and these are all over the place. It seems like there's a churn, there's a rising, and this is not going to change in the near future. In fact, in the current moment, thanks to the pandemic, we are seeing even more divisions, the digital divide for one, especially in education. A lot of people from lower income backgrounds in countries like India don't have access to smartphones and internet connectivity. They completely cut off from education. And many of you in India would know about the migrant crisis, where migrant laborers were thrown into a panic and they wanted to go back to their villages because nobody had thought about what to do about their case. The pandemic has thrown up these divisions even more starkly in front of our eyes, which is why dealing with issues of social justice, of empowerment and inclusion is not just a soft, fluffy thing, but it's something extremely important for the growth and development of humanity. So I love the theme for this year, which is Coaching for Humanity. And I feel and I fully believe this is an important subject for humanity. Right? And most of you would be aware of the United Nations Sustainable Goals. And many of these goals are to do with removing some kind of inequality. Right? And I came across this in a report which said empowering people and ensuring inclusiveness and equality is critical for sustainable development. And I know many of you are coaches, and I got a mail this year from ICF, as all of you would have, which spoke about ICF statement of diversity, inclusion, and belongings. Something really critical for both coaches as well as the clients and the people we serve. The question is, therefore, what can we as coaches do? The answer is a lot of things. So I'm really happy that we are in a unique position to serve, of course, not just our clients, but humanity and the cause of sustainable development through coaching. So I'll share with you some of the things that we can do, and also some of the things that I am seeking to do through the work of Flow, through the work that I do in terms of bringing about inclusion and empowerment. Right? Can we actively speak to coach clients on these particular issues? And it's so important to coach on a variety of things that we all coach, either as executive coaches or life coaches. But I believe coaching for inclusion and belonging is extremely critical. And that's one reason why I started Glow with my co-founder about 2 years ago. So I do the work of leadership development. And after doing this work for close to 20 years, I noticed something which irritated me and then later prompted me to do something. That in most cohorts of senior level leaders, there were very few women. There would be 1 or 2 women in a large group, very few, almost absent from boardroom meetings. And however, when I coached some of these women one-on-one, I found that they had certain issues, they had certain challenges which were not addressed in a large and open forum. I felt the need really to seek to do 2 things, which is our mission in Glow: enhance inclusion and really empower, serve, and support women towards the end of creating a just and equitable society. And apart from the leadership development work that I do, this is what we seek to bring to the clients that we serve, to the organizations that we serve, which is, can we help our leaders have compassionate conversations? Can we help them to lead with courage, compassion, humility, empathy, all the qualities which now I think in the current pandemic situation seem to be or are really critical. That's one. Let's bring this into what we do either with individual clients or group coaching. The second one is provide coaching support to underserved groups. And, thanks Gaurav for mentioning that. And this is something, again, which is closely, of course, related to my purpose and my cause, but it's also something we do as a family. A few years ago, my daughter, Kavya, who's now 19, she was 14 at that time, my husband, Rajesh, and I, we decided to set up My Daughter's Precious. It started as an awareness project to, bring about awareness about gender inequality. And what it has grown into is an initiative that provides both funding, scholarships for young women to complete higher education. And the other thing we started doing 2 years ago is providing each of these young women with a mentor or a coach. Mentor and a coach. Some of the mentors are not accredited coaches, but some of them are, but all of them offer this support to these young girls. And we have seen such a remarkable difference in these young women once they've gone through 6 to 8 months of mentoring. And just the fact that somebody is listening to them without judgment, giving them space to express themselves in ways that they haven't been able to do in their lives, somebody who is there, unselfishly to guide and motivate them, makes a big difference in their self-confidence, self-esteem, and the way they see themselves in the world. I know many of you are doing it. I know Gaurav does this work, but one of my dreams is really to take the work of coaching to communities which are not supported. Of course, we do want to coach leaders, but can we bring this experience to marginalized people, to minorities who don't actually get the support that they deserve? And that's the second thing which we could seek out and do. And I know many of you do pro bono coaching. And idea is to see how we can democratize this and bring it to more and more people so that we can support inclusion and empowerment. And coaching is a great way for a person to get in touch with his or her potential and power. We are placed in a very unique position. The third part, and this is something I know all of us as coaches and leaders love to do, need to do, keep doing, is self. The meditation, I know, is a part of self-work. And I heard a lot of the speakers yesterday talk about the importance of meditation. And I know all of us as coaches love to keep doing programs and working on ourselves so that in our presence, in our being, we can truly serve our clients. And in order to do this well, in order to focus more on our being and presence, there are three things I'm going to invite you to think about as a coach, as well as a leader, right? And these are the three things which are important when we want to do inclusion, when we want to coach for empowerment. The first thing we want to be mindful of is bias. We all are biased, whether it's conscious or whether it's unconscious. We all have an inclination or prejudice for or against one group or person. And this can lead to unfair advantages and disadvantages. And we don't have to have a strident prejudice or, give hate speeches. It shows up in micro moments. And I'll tell you, I think I'm a fairly, self-aware person. And I am really actively working on my biases. This happened about a year or two ago. And I was doing a workshop for a group of sales leaders in an organization. And it was morning and we were waiting. And the coordinator told me, the sales head will be here shortly to address the group. I didn't know about the sales head. So I just asked, when is he coming? And this person said, Madam will be here in 10 minutes. So it didn't cross my head that the sales head in this organization could be a woman. To be fair, she's one of the very few women in that position. But we are all have these little biases which and when I coach women, which is something I'm passionate about and I love to do, we do encounter these biases, which we might have as coaches, but we also want to support people to work on some bias. We coach the whole person, and it's important to understand that these can exist, and it's not a facet of imagination. When we go deeper into coaching, we could encounter some of these biases. And especially when you look at women, and this is not me, this is Harvard Business Review talking about the fact that women leaders do face biases which prevents them from reaching the next level. So when I coach women, I think one, it's very important for me to check in my biases. And I do have some biases which could be also providing people an unfair advantage. And it's also important to be aware of these things exist. Not a figment of imagination. And I'll give you an example of the first bias, prove it again, which just says women have to keep proving themselves over and over again. And I was coaching a very dynamic women entrepreneur. She has two kids and started this company. And she came to me saying she's feeling very stressed out. She's overworked. And on the face of it, it seemed like maybe you need better time management. Maybe you need to delegate. Maybe, it's saying no to things. When we did the work, when we went deeper into it, and I saw that there was this strong desire and need to prove it again. As a woman, she had to keep proving herself so that investors, employees, everybody would not think less of her. That's the bias. We carry that with us. Double bind. I don't know whether any of you saw the debate recently between Kamala Harris and Mike Pence. And I admit I didn't see the debate, but my social media feeds were all abuzz with these two words and the picture of Kamala Harris saying, "I'm speaking." You might be wondering, what's the big deal? The big deal was that she was able to handle interruptions from her, opponent, and she was able to do it with grace by staying calm. And there were a lot of articles on how difficult it is for women to do that. Because if they are aggressive, if they say, "shut up," like certain men can, they are seen as too bossy, too aggressive. If they allow themselves to be continuously interrupted, and women have a tendency to get interrupted 3 times more than men, they are seen as too nice. Many women grapple with this, and can we be aware that this does exist as a bias and be sensitive to that? The maternal wall, how motherhood stops women from their growth. And this is something I've had to work out. So, I did my MBA, I had fairly demanding job, which I was very proud of. But after my daughter was born, I took a back seat. And and interestingly, I'm attracting a lot of women clients who are going through the same thing, the guilt of motherhood. And I often have a bias that it is actually tough for women to handle both. And when I encounter my clients who face the maternal wall, I actually find myself drawn into their story. And that's how my bias would tug of war, which is women actually going against each other. And the reason I want to mention and talk about biases is, let's be aware that we carry biases as coaches. Our clients carry their own biases. It shows up when people interview, when they hire, when they promote people. It shows up in the way offices are designed. Right? Offices are not disabled friendly, and I've seen this across India because we don't think about that. So it's very important to be aware of bias. The second aspect to be aware of is rank. What is rank? And some of you are familiar with the work of Arnold Mendel will know about rank. The sum of our power and privilege. And we all carry this. And this creeps into every social interaction, whether we are aware of it or not. So as an early newbie coach, about 7 years ago, I was doing some coaching work for a large technology company. And one of my clients was a German, and I'll call him Hans. And Hans lived in Berlin. I was coaching him on Skype. We did our chemistry call and we seemed to hit it off. But now when I think about it, one of the things I was very aware of in that conversation, in that engagement, is he is a white male from a developed country. And now when I think back, I'm not sure whether I served him well enough, because this aspect of rank came in between us. Because it went off well, he was able to make some shifts, but I was left feeling that, maybe I didn't push hard enough. Maybe I didn't hold him as accountable as I would have with some of the other clients. Maybe rank was playing a role in the way I interacted. And there's nothing right or wrong. But it's really important to bring that awareness into us, that rank exists. And there are different types of rank. Social rank. And, in India, we're a fairly ascriptive society where you're born, the caste you belong to, the way you can speak English, all of these constitute a certain kind of a rank. The other is a situational rank in an organization structure. Hierarchy plays an extremely important role. And I felt this when I'm coaching some clients who are in a public sector bank. And one of the things they struggle with is speaking up to their seniors. And it's not to do with they are fearful or, they don't have the guts or the ability to speak. It's just that they are under situational rank. The third, psychological, spiritual rank. And I call this a coach's trap. Because this is like, I've done 10,000 hours of meditation. I'm more woke than you. And that gives us a sense of superiority. And I'm not talking just about coaches, people with, life experiences, people who worked on themselves also are in a slightly different rank than those who are not. So it's really important to be aware of how rank plays out in our conversations, how it impacts us as coaches, how it impacts the leaders who we serve. And the third aspect of this after bias and rank is something called intersectionality. And I came across this when I was doing some research for my next book, which is on women and power. And it's something originated from Professor called Kimberly Crenshaw in the US. And it had to do with her studies into the women's movement. And she found the women's movement in the USA was largely a white women's movement. So Black women did not actually get heard or seen much in the women's movement. And their stories were quite different from white women. So intersectionality is nothing but the overlap of multiple identities that we hold. I'm a woman, I'm an Indian, I am a mother, I am a certified coach, I am an entrepreneur. And when I go out into the world, I carry all of these identities. So the coaches, also carry these identities into every conversation. Our clients carry these identities. I really want to be aware, and especially when we are dealing with underserved groups, it's so important to be sensitive to the various aspects of identities that play out. We will carry these identities with us. So when I'm, mentoring a young girl, this is a young girl who comes from a very conservative Muslim family, not very well off. So she has, of course, multiple identities which play out, and I want to be sensitive to everything that she holds, just as I want to be aware of all the multiple identities that I hold as I enter. Right? We are our whole people. And it's something very interesting from Walt Whitman that I recall, which says, of course, I contradict myself. I hold multitude. We hold multitude. We are many people and we are one person. And this is what we carry into every interaction. So knowing this and understanding that these three things exist, we are biased, we do have an awareness, we need to have an awareness of rank. In fact, an awareness of the privilege we hold is so important to not abuse that privilege. And we are this beautiful, complex, I would say, amalgam of multiple identities. So what do we do about it? So how can we really coach for inclusion and empowerment? And one of the things I like to remember is, as a coach, we are creating a safe, sacred space for our clients. And we want leaders to be able to do this in the conversations they have with their people. We want every human being to interact with another human being in this safe and sacred space, what we call compassionate conversation. The question is, how do we begin to create this sacred space for ourselves? And I know a lot of leaders have been speaking about some of this. So I want to share with you a model that we use at Glow, which is called the ECHO model. And I'll start from the back, which is when we enter into somebody's world, which is what we are doing as coaches, we are entering into this unique ecosystem, this context of our clients. We want to enter with an open mind, right? The sacred space. And many of you know in India, when we go into temples, we leave our slippers behind, right? So we leave it out. We enter, and I would see this symbolically, we enter with an open heart and an open mind. So it's so important to be aware of what are the biases that I want to check in, that I want to be aware of and not ignore, but be very mindful of that I don't bring these into the world that I am going to enter. That's the first part. Just starting with an open mind and open heart and checking in some of these thoughts, this chatter, the mindset, the belief, and the bias that could come in the way and pollute the sacred space. The second is humility. And I was listening to the previous panel where three leaders were talking, and everybody mentioned humility. Extremely critical, especially in this current pandemic context where we don't know. We really don't know how things are going to be in the future. We really don't know what's going on with the other person. To enter into another person's world with humility. And again, to use the same analogy, I noticed this only after it was pointed out that in many sanctums in our temples, the doorway is kind of narrow and it's short. Do we necessarily have to bow and enter into that sacred space? So we enter into that sacred space saying, I'm here to serve, I may not know everything, and I certainly can't assume to know everything about your world, no matter how similar we may seem. And the third aspect is curiosity, right? I've entered your world with an open mind, with an open heart, with the knowledge that I don't really know too much about it. Can I hold this curiosity to know your world? Can I hold this curiosity to see it through your eyes without bias coming in the way, right? Can I be curious about all these amazing identities that you hold, your context and your world? That's why curiosity comes into the picture. And the last one is empathy. Different from sympathy, because sympathy comes naturally, oh my God, and we have to self-manage as coaches. But understanding that even though I am not a part of your world and your world could be different, there are certain things about it that I can connect. I can connect to the pain of exclusion. I can connect to the pain of not belonging. I can connect to the way you might feel when you were disempowered in that instance that you really spoke about, and hold that empathy as we create and have this conversation in the sacred space. And this is something we work in, and I must admit, whenever I do leadership development workshops, I kind of try to sneak this in terms of saying, can we have conversation where we listen with all of these, right? Deep listening, offering our wholehearted presence with openness, humility, curiosity, and empathy can itself be so empowering to another person. Being included in their world leads to inclusion. And if we bring these qualities as coaches into our context, into our conversation, this is really what we want to create, is our world, which is a better world. I bring my world to you. I bring my knowledge, maybe all the wisdom that I have. I also bring my own humility, vulnerability, the fact that I am a biased person with multiple identities into your world. And we meet there and have this fabulous transformative conversation so that together we can create this better world, right? Which is what coaching for inclusion and empowerment is all about. And, there's this quotation, a poem by Marianne Williamson that I love, where she says, when we let our light shine, we give other people the permission to let their light shine. So just going to think, am I at time? I think I'm pretty much on time. So I just want to conclude by saying, let's bring in more of these qualities into our world as coaches: empathy, curiosity, humility, openness, be aware of biases, rank, how these play out. And with that intentionality, we could really serve our clients, our leaders, to create a world which is more inclusive, where there is more belonging, where each person is empowered to live their full potential. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. Am I on time?
Yes, we are a little bit late. We had 10 minutes for the Q&A. However, now we are left with 5 minutes. So I'm just going to ask you 2 questions. So that means we'll have to wrap up the questions in 2 minutes. The first question is, how is coaching an entrepreneur different from coaching a corporate leader? That's the first question. The second question is, how is coaching a women leader different from coaching a male leader in an organization? So over to you.
Great. So thank you for that. I coach both people in corporates and I also coach entrepreneurs. So on the face of it, the fundamentals don't change. You follow the same process of listening, asking powerful questions, tapping into the person's resourcefulness. I think you do all of that. And I think a couple of things we want to be mindful of is the context, right? So every time I do a coaching session, and I'm sure all of us as coaches do that, we do have a discovery session where we understand the context. Where is this person coming from and what is their context? And that helps us to ask the right question. The context for an entrepreneur can be different from a context for a leader. A lot of challenges are common. How do I build a great team, right? How do I delegate when I'm the founder? How do I make a distinction between me and my organization? There are also some other things that I've noticed I need to work with entrepreneurs, which is their own motivational levels, right? Nobody's forcing them to go to work. How do I get up every day and get myself to work. Some of these things might be, have a little bit of difference, but otherwise the fundamentals don't change much. And the second question, yes, women leaders and male leaders. So I would say, again, the fundamentals don't change. But when I do the work with women leaders, some of the things we want to watch out for, again, with the context, are their biases. We want to be aware that subconsciously, and though we say we want the solutions to come from the client, subconsciously, we don't want to lead our client down a different path, which might work for a male leader, which might not work for a female leader. And I'll give you a very quick example. I had a female client who was in the corporate world and who had this issue of not being able to speak up in front of seniors. And this came from her lived experience of growing up in a very patriarchal household where girls were not allowed to talk, right? So if I go deeper into the conversations, I will find instances of bias, and I'll have to deal with them probably, or help the coach, help my client handle that in a slightly different way than I would do for a male leader.
Yeah.
This especially comes up in group coaching. Right? When I do workshops with women and we are coaching them on biases and beliefs and mindsets, a lot of different mindsets come up, which may not come up when we are doing a session with male leaders, right? Like networking, guilt of motherhood guilt is a big theme which does not come up when I'm coaching male leaders. So it's about looking, there are some themes, the process remains the same, but I think it's very important to understand the context.
Yeah.
And the issues at a very core level, we all are the same human beings with the same needs and fears. But above that, there are contextual differences. Right? There are things, there are, what we might call systemic oppressions, like the patriarchy, which would have played a role in the person being that way. And that's what we want to be sensitive and help the person to work through. Generational trauma. So when you do paths work with clients, you hear different voices for men and women. So it's just being sensitive to that and working with some of them.
Thank you so much, Nirupama. You never stop to amaze me with the kind of insights that you bring in and the kind of being that you bring in. There's so much of beautiful dance that I always experience. The way you show up when you start to communicate, the way when you start to coach people, and what you say. There's total congruence that I've always experienced as a coach, as a participant, as a fellow facilitator as well. Thank you so much for being who you are and spreading the beautiful light that you are spreading. Where coaching is, you are leveraging coaching for inclusion and bringing diversity together. This is exactly what our keynote speaker Damien spoke about, that how effective are you when you are working with people who are different than you. And this is exactly what Damien was talking about. So thank you so much, Nirupama. It was absolute pleasure to have you here. Look forward to see you again sometime.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Gaurav. My pleasure. And, talking about something that I love, that I believe deeply in. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity and this platform to share a little bit more about this. And if I may, maybe I'll just show, in case there are people who would like to know more about the work. So maybe I'll just share some, my last slide, which is if anybody wants to, connect with me and get to know more, this is where you can reach me and know more, a little bit more about the work we do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks a lot.